Dr. Tae-ho Kim looked up from his microscope when he heard the lab door open. It was past 10 p.m., and he thought everyone else had gone home. The university building was quiet, except for the hum of machines and the soft patter of rain against the windows. "Hello," he called out, pushing his glasses up on his nose. "Is someone there?" No answer came. Tae-ho sighed and stood up from his stool. He had been working for 15 hours straight on his biofilter project. Maybe it was time to go home and get some sleep. As he turned to switch off his equipment, a strange sound came from the doorway, like water bubbling through pipes. Tae-ho froze. "Dr. Kim," said a voice that sounded like several people talking at once. "I apologize for disturbing your work at this late hour." Tae-ho turned slowly. In the doorway stood a figure unlike any he had ever seen. It was tall, nearly 7 feet, with silvery skin that seemed to shift like mercury under the fluorescent lights. Instead of a normal face, it had 4 pairs of eyes arranged in concentric circles. The creature wore what looked like a formal suit but made of material that changed colors slightly as it moved. Tae-ho's heart hammered in his chest. He gripped the edge of his lab table to steady himself. You're not human," he said, stating the obvious. The being made a sound like gentle chimes. "Very observant, Dr. Kim. No, I am not human. My name is Professor Nix. I am a water systems engineer from what you would call the Galactic Confederation." Tae-ho blinked several times. He was either hallucinating from lack of sleep or talking to an actual alien. Either way, he decided to play along. "How do you know my name? And why are you here?" he asked, surprised at how calm his voice sounded. Professor Nix moved further into the lab. Its movements were fluid, almost like it was gliding. "We have been monitoring your work on enzyme-based purification systems. Your research has attracted attention from across the galaxy." The alien's voice became clearer as it spoke, adapting to human speech patterns. "I am here because my people need your help." Tae-ho laughed nervously. "My help? You have space travel, and who knows what other technology. What could I possibly help you with?" Professor Nix reached into a pocket and pulled out what looked like a small glass cube. When it placed the cube on the table, the cube expanded and began projecting 3-dimensional images of beautiful blue-green worlds, advanced cities with soaring towers and beings of different shapes and sizes. "The Confederation spans thousands of worlds," Nix explained. "Our technology has allowed us to explore and settle much of our galaxy, but we face a crisis that our science cannot solve." The projection changed to show what looked like water treatment facilities, then zoomed in to show molecular structures. "Our main world has developed a water contamination problem. An industrial chemical has entered our water cycle. It is unlike anything we have encountered before." Tae-ho leaned closer to the projection, his scientific curiosity overcoming his fear. The molecular structure was fascinating, complex and self-stabilizing in a way he had never seen. "Why can't you filter it out with your technology? Surely—" "The contaminant adapts," Nix interrupted. "When we try to filter it, it changes its structure. It learns from each attempt to remove it. Our methods have hit a wall." The alien's 4 sets of eyes blinked in sequence. "But you humans approach problems differently. Your work with biofilters, using living organisms to clean water, this is an approach we have not fully explored. The contaminant seems to react less adaptively to biological solutions." Tae-ho sat back down on his stool, his mind racing. If this was real, it was the opportunity of a lifetime. Not just to learn about alien technology, but to help solve a real problem. "What's in it for me, for humans?" he asked, then immediately felt embarrassed. It sounded so selfish. But Professor Nix nodded as if expecting the question. "A fair exchange. If you help create a solution, the Confederation will share selected scientific knowledge with Earth. Not everything. Your civilization is not ready for some technologies, but enough to advance your understanding of the universe by several centuries." The alien placed another cube on the table. This one projected what looked like mathematical equations and diagrams of incredible complexity. "A sample of what we can offer," said Nix. Tae-ho stared at the equations. They described principles of physics that went far beyond current human understanding. Just a fraction of this knowledge could revolutionize Earth science. I would need help, Taeho said slowly. My colleague, Dr. Ji-Young Park. She's a microbiologist who specializes in extremophile bacteria, organisms that live in extreme conditions. Her expertise would be valuable. Professor Nix's eyes blinked again in that strange sequence. 2 humans are acceptable, but no more. The Confederation has strict protocols about contact with developing worlds. Taeho nodded, still not entirely, convinced this wasn't an elaborate prank or a dream. I'll need samples of the contaminant and time. This won't happen overnight. Of course, Nix agreed. I can provide samples in containers safe for human handling. The Confederation can allow 3 of your Earth months for this project. Taeho took a deep breath. If this is real, and I'm still not completely convinced it is, then I'll call Ji-Young tomorrow. Professor Nix made that chiming sound again. Thank you, Dr. Kim. Your assistance may save billions of lives across the Confederation. The alien reached into another pocket and pulled out a small vial filled with shimmering blue liquid. This contains the contaminant in a neutralized state. For study, I will return tomorrow night with more equipment and materials. As Nix turned to leave, Taeho called out, Wait, how did you get in here without anyone seeing you? Our campus has security. The alien paused at the door. Your security systems are primitive by our standards. Do not worry. No one observed my arrival, and no one will see me leave. After Professor Nix left, Taeho sat in his lab for a long time, holding the vial of blue liquid. His hands were shaking slightly. If this was real, everything humanity knew about their place in the universe was about to change. He carefully placed the vial in a secure storage unit and locked it. Then he picked up his phone and called Ji-Young. It didn't matter that it was nearly midnight. Ji-Young? It's Taeho. I need you to come to the lab first thing tomorrow. Something incredible has happened. He paused, wondering how to explain. Just trust me. This is bigger than anything we've ever worked on. After hanging up, Taeho looked out the window at the night sky. The rain had stopped and stars were visible between the clouds. One of those points of light might be the home of Professor Nix's people. And they needed his help. What Taeho didn't know was that the Confederation had other plans. The exchange of knowledge was a carefully designed test. Humanity was considered too unpredictable, too dangerous for full contact. This project would determine whether humans were worth further interaction or better left isolated on their small blue planet. As he gathered his things to finally go home, Taeho had no idea that his work over the next 3 months would change the fate of both humanity and the Galactic Confederation forever. You expect me to believe this? Ji-Young Park crossed her arms and stared at Taeho. Her short black hair was still messy from rushing to the lab early in the morning. She pointed at the vial of blue liquid on the table. You're saying an alien gave you this? Taeho nodded. I know how it sounds. I spent half the night wondering if I dreamed it. And this alien is coming back tonight? Ji-Young raised an eyebrow. Yes. Around the same time as yesterday. That's why I wanted you here. Taeho pushed his glasses up. You're the best microbiologist I know. If anyone can help create a bacteria that can break down this contaminant, it's you. Ji-Young sighed and picked up the vial, turning it in her hands. The blue liquid inside seemed to move on its own, forming patterns before breaking apart and reforming. This isn't like any substance I've ever seen, she admitted. What did you say it was? A water contaminant from their world. It adapts to mechanical filtering methods. That's why they came to us. They think a biological solution might work. Ji-Young was about to say more when the lab door opened. Both scientists turned, expecting to see a student or another professor. Instead, the tall, silver-skinned form of Professor Nix glided into the room. Ji-Young gasped and dropped the vial, but Taeho caught it before it hit the floor. Good morning. Dr. Kim, Dr. Park. The alien's multi-toned voice filled the room. I see you have brought your colleague into our project. Ji Young's mouth opened and closed several times before she found her voice. You're real, she said finally. Professor, Nix made the chiming sound that Taeho now recognized as laughter. Very real, Dr. Park, and in need of your expertise. Over the next few hours, Professor Nix showed them more detailed information about the contaminant. The alien set up equipment that allowed them to see the molecular structure in ways their own technology couldn't. The contaminant was unlike anything on Earth. It used ambient energy to replicate itself and could bind to almost any molecule. The problem is not just filtering it out, Nix explained. We need something that will break it down completely. Otherwise, it simply reforms. Ji Young, who had gotten over her initial shock, was now fully engaged in the problem. I think we need to look at extreme offals, she said. Bacteria that live in extreme environments like deep sea vents or volcanic springs. They have unique enzymes that might be able to break these bonds. Taeho nodded. We could try to engineer a bacteria that sees this contaminant as food. Professor Nix's eyes blinked in sequence. An interesting approach. This is why we came. To you. The Confederation's biological sciences lag behind our physical sciences. For the next 2 weeks, Taeho and Ji Young worked nearly non-stop. Professor Nix visited every night, bringing more samples and equipment. During the day, the two scientists told their department they were working on a special research project and needed privacy. They tested dozens of bacteria strains against samples of the contaminant. Most died immediately. Some survived, but couldn't break down the substance. But on day 16, they had a breakthrough. Look at this, Ji Young called Taeho over to her microscope. This strain from the Mariana Trench thermal vents is actually eating the contaminant. Taeho peered through the microscope. She was right. The bacteria were slowly breaking down the blue substance into simpler compounds. It's too slow, though, he said. At this rate, it would take years to clean a small pond. But it's a start, Ji Young said. Now we can modify it, make it more efficient. That night, when Professor Nix arrived, they showed the alien their progress. For the first time, they saw what might have been excitement in the alien's strange eyes. This is promising, Nix said. The Confederation will be pleased. As they continued working, Taeho noticed something odd. Whenever he asked about the Confederation, Professor Nix gave vague answers. And the knowledge the alien shared while advanced seemed carefully selected. One night when Nix stepped away from the lab, Taeho took a chance. He touched the alien's communication device that had been left on the table. To his surprise, it activated at his touch. Images and text in a strange language flashed across its surface. Taeho couldn't read the language, but he saw images of Earth, his university, and even pictures of himself and Ji Young. When he heard Nix returning, he quickly moved away from the device. But his mind was racing. Why was the Confederation so interested in them specifically? And why all the secrecy? Over the following weeks, as they refined their bacteria, Taeho found more chances to access Nix's device. Using a pattern recognition program he had developed, he began to decipher some of the alien language. What he found disturbed him. The Confederation didn't see humans as partners. They saw them as potential threats. This project wasn't just about helping with a contamination problem. It was a test. If humans could solve this problem, the Confederation planned to take the solution but keep Earth isolated. If they failed, it would confirm the aliens' belief that humans were too primitive to be concerned about. Taeho didn't tell Ji Young everything he had discovered. He only said they should be careful about what they shared with Professor Nix. I'm not sure the Confederation is being completely honest with us, he told her during lunch one day. Ji Young nodded slowly. I had the same feeling. Notice how Nix never tells us exactly how they'll use our bacteria, or what happens after we give them the solution. 2 months into the project, they had success. Their modified bacteria could now break down the contaminant quickly and efficiently. It consumed the blue substance and converted it into harmless compounds. But instead of immediately sharing their success with Professor Nix, Taeho suggested they make one more modification. I've noticed something about all Confederation technology, he told Ji Young late one night after Nix had left. They all emit a specific frequency. I think it's part of how their tech communicates with each other. What are you thinking? Ji Young asked, looking up from her notes. Taeho's face was serious. I think we should add something to our bacteria, a secondary function that stays dormant until it's exposed to that frequency. What kind of function? One that ensures the Confederation treats Earth with respect. He showed her what he had found on Nix's device, the plans to take their solution, but keep Earth isolated. Ji Young's eyes widened as she read his translations. So what's your plan? She asked finally. Taeho explained his idea. The bacteria would have a second stage that activated only when exposed to Confederation technology. Once activated, it would target certain synthetic materials that he had identified as common in their devices. Ji Young was quiet for a long time after he finished explaining. This is risky, she said at last. If we're caught. If we don't. Do it, Earth might never get a real chance to join the galactic community, Taeho replied. They'll take what they want and leave us behind. After a long discussion, they agreed. Over the next 2 weeks, they carefully added the secondary function to their bacteria. To anyone examining it, even Professor Nix, it would look like a simple adaptation to make the bacteria more efficient. But in reality, they had created something much more powerful. A weapon hidden inside a gift. A way to ensure humanity wouldn't be left behind when the stars were calling. 3 months after their strange first meeting with Professor Nix, Taeho and Ji Young were ready to present their solution. The lab had become their second home. Empty coffee cups filled the trash cans. Notes covered the whiteboards. And in a special container on the main table sat their creation, a bacteria that could save an alien civilization. Or change it forever. Are you sure about this? Ji Young asked quietly as they waited for Professor Nix to arrive. It was late evening, and the university building was empty except for them. Taeho nodded, his face serious. We've gone over the code in their DNA a dozen times. The secondary function is hidden so well that even their advanced technology shouldn't detect it unless they're specifically looking for it. And you're sure it will only activate when exposed to their communication frequency? Positive. It will remain completely dormant until then. It's like a computer program waiting for the right command to run. Ji Young sighed and rubbed her eyes. I just hope we're not making a terrible mistake. What if... The door opened, and Professor Nix glided into the room. After 3 months, they were used to the alien's strange appearance, but today Nix seemed different, more formal. The alien wore what looked like ceremonial clothes with symbols that glowed faintly in the lab's light. Dr. Kim, Dr. Park, Nix greeted them. Today marks the end of our collaboration. The Confederation is eager to hear of your progress. Taeho stood straighter. We've succeeded. Our bacteria can break down the contaminant completely and efficiently. He gestured to the container on the table. Inside was a clear liquid with a slight green tint. Billions of their engineered bacteria suspended in a nutrient solution. May I? Professor Nix asked, approaching the container. Taeho nodded. Of course. The alien lifted the container and examined it, the 4 pairs of eyes blinking in that strange sequence they had come to recognize as interest. How does it work? Nix asked. Ji Young stepped forward. The bacteria identifies the contaminant as food. It attaches to the molecules and breaks the unusual bonds that make the contaminant so persistent. Then, it converts the components into simple, harmless compounds. And how quickly does it work? In our tests with the samples you provided, it cleaned a liter of heavily contaminated water in about 6 hours, Taeho said. The bacteria reproduces quickly, but dies off when the contaminant is gone. It has no food source after that. This last part was true, but incomplete. What Taeho didn't mention was that the bacteria had a second appetite, one that would only awaken under specific conditions. Professor Nix placed the container down carefully. This is most impressive. The Confederation will want to run its own tests before full implementation, of course. Of course, Taeho agreed. We've prepared detailed documentation on how the bacteria works. He handed Nix a data drive. This contains all our research notes and the genetic sequence of the bacteria. Everything you need to understand and even reproduce it if necessary. What he didn't say was that the documentation only explained the primary function. The secondary function was buried deep in the bacteria's complex DNA, masked to look like standard genetic material. The Confederation thanks you for your assistance, Nix said formally. As agreed, we will share knowledge with your species. The alien placed a small crystal on the table. It was about the size of a thumb drive but seemed to be made of some kind of living crystal. It glowed with a soft blue light. This contains scientific information that will advance your understanding of physics, medicine, and biology, Nix explained. However, I must warn you that it is limited. The Confederation Council decided that full access to our knowledge would be disruptive to your development. Tejo picked up the crystal, feeling a mix of excitement and disappointment. He had suspected they wouldn't get everything that was promised. His suspicions about the Confederation's true intentions had been right. How do we access the information? He asked. The crystal will interface with your computer systems. It is designed to be compatible with your technology, Nix explained. Simply connect it to your computing device. Ji Young joined Tai Ho looking at the crystal. Thank you, she said to the alien, her voice neutral. We look forward to learning from this. Professor Nix's eyes blinked in sequence. I have enjoyed working with you both. Your species has great potential. The alien seemed to hesitate, then added, I hope this is not the last interaction between our peoples. Tejo smiled slightly. I have a feeling it won't be. As Professor Nix prepared to leave with the container of bacteria, Tejo felt a moment of doubt. Were they doing the right thing? What if their creation caused more problems than it solved? But then he remembered what he had seen on Nix's device. The Confederation saw humans as primitive, potentially dangerous. They had no intention of treating Earth as an equal. This was the only way to ensure humanity got a fair chance. Professor Nix, Tejo called as the alien reached the door. One thing you should know. The bacteria works best in closed water systems. The more it circulates, the more effective it is. This was true, but it was also a subtle encouragement to spread the bacteria widely through their systems, which would give the secondary function maximum effect when activated. Noted, Dr. Kim. Thank you for the advice. After the alien left, Tejo and Ji Young stood in silence for several minutes. Do you think we'll ever hear from them again? Ji Young finally asked. Oh, I'm counting on it, Tejo replied, turning the crystal in his hands, but maybe not in the way they planned. That night, they connected the crystal to a secure, isolated computer in the lab. As promised, it contained incredible scientific information, theories and discoveries that were centuries ahead of human knowledge. But as Nix had warned, it was clearly limited. There were references to technologies and principles that weren't fully explained, as if pages had been torn from a book. They're treating us like children, Ji Young said as they scrolled through the information, giving us just enough to be impressed but not enough to truly compete with them. Tejo nodded, which is why we did what we did. They spent the night studying the crystal's contents, copying everything to secure drives. In the morning, exhausted, but excited, they went home to get some rest. Neither of them spoke about the bacteria now traveling with Professor Nix back to the Confederation worlds. Neither mentioned the secondary function hidden in its DNA, waiting for the right signal to activate. Neither said aloud what they both were thinking, that in 3 to 6 months the Galactic Confederation might discover that underestimating humans was a serious mistake. As Tejo fell into bed in his small apartment, he whispered to himself, Good luck, Professor Nix. I think you're going to need it. 5 months passed without any word from Professor Nix or the Galactic Confederation. Tejo and Ji Young returned to their normal research at the university, but both found it hard to focus. How could studying ordinary Earth bacteria compare to what they had experienced? They met often for coffee to discuss the crystal's contents. The knowledge it contained had already helped them make breakthroughs in their fields, but they never talked about their bacteria in public. That subject was reserved for late nights in Tejo's secure lab, where they wondered if their creation had worked as planned. On a rainy Tuesday evening, Tejo was alone in his lab when the lights suddenly flickered. The air seemed to vibrate and a low hum filled the room. He looked up from his microscope, his heart racing. The far wall of the lab shimmered and then seemed to dissolve. Through what looked like a hole in reality stepped a figure that was definitely not Professor Nix. This alien was nearly 8 feet, tall and covered in what looked like living armor. Its body was bulky and powerful, with 4 arms instead of 2. Its face was hidden behind a helmet with a dark visor, but Tejo could see multiple eyes glowing behind it. Dr. Tejo Kim. The alien's voice rumbled like distant thunder. "I am Commander Vex of the Confederation Security Forces. We need to talk." Tejo slowly stood, trying to stay calm despite his racing heart. "Hello, Commander. I wasn't expecting visitors today." "I'm sure you weren't," Commander Vex replied, the voice cold and hard. "Just as we weren't expecting your bacteria to eat through half our water processing facilities." Tejo tried to look surprised. "What? That's impossible. The bacteria was designed only to consume the specific contaminant." The alien commander moved closer, towering over Tejo. "Do not play games with me, human. Our scientists have analyzed your creation thoroughly. It has a secondary function. One that activates when exposed to our communication systems. One that targets specific materials in our technology." Tejo took a deep breath. There was no point in denying it now. "I'd like to call Dr. Park," he said calmly. "She helped create the bacteria. She should be part of this conversation." Commander Vex's helmet tilted slightly. "Very well, but be quick." Tejo called Ji Young, saying only that she needed to come to the lab immediately. While they waited, Commander Vex paced the room, examining the equipment with obvious contempt. "Your technology is so primitive," the alien said. "And yet you managed to create something that has brought 3 sectors of the Confederation to a standstill." 20 minutes later, Ji Young rushed into the lab. She stopped short when she saw Commander Vex. "What's happening?" she asked Tejo, her eyes wide. "Our bacteria worked," Tejo said simply. "The secondary function activated." Commander Vex turned to face both scientists. "Your bacteria has spread through our recycling systems to multiple colonies and space stations. It is consuming important components of our technology. Water filtration systems, communication arrays, even defense installations, all are failing." The commander's voice grew even colder. "The Confederation Council demands that you provide the deactivation code for the bacteria immediately." "Deactivation code?" Ji Young repeated, looking at Tejo. Tejo nodded slightly. They had indeed built a kill switch into the bacteria, a specific frequency that would cause it to become dormant. But he wasn't ready to reveal that yet. "Before we discuss that," Tejo said carefully, "I'd like to know why the Confederation lied to us." Commander Vex went still. "Explain." "We know the Confederation views humanity as a potential threat. We know this project was a test, and that you never intended to treat Earth as an equal. We know you plan to take our solution and leave us isolated here, never to join the galactic community." Tejo crossed his arms. "We found all this in Professor Nix's files." The alien commander was quiet for a long moment. Then a sound came from behind the helmet, something like a laugh but without any humor. "Clever humans. Yes, the Confederation Council has classified your species as potentially dangerous. Your history is filled with violence. Your technology develops in erratic bursts. Your genetics show signs of outside manipulation from millennia ago. You are unpredictable. So you decided to use us and discard us," Ji Young said. "We decided to contain you," Commander Vex corrected, "until we could determine if you were ready for contact." Tejo shook his head. "And who decides when we're ready?" "The Confederation, based on what standards?" "This is not a philosophical discussion," the alien commander snapped. "Your bacteria is causing real damage. Systems are failing across 3 sectors. People, not humans but people nonetheless, are suffering because of what you've done." Tejo felt a twinge of guilt, but pushed it aside. "We gave you exactly what you asked for, a solution to your water contamination problem. That our solution also prevents you from treating Earth as a lesser world is simply good design." Commander Vex's 4 hands clenched into fists. The Council demands the deactivation code. And we demand that Earth be recognized as a full member of the Galactic Confederation, Tejo replied, surprising himself with his confidence. With all the rights and protections that come with membership. Ji Young stepped forward to stand beside him. Equal treatment, equal access to knowledge and technology. No more being treated like children who can't be trusted with the real science. The alien commander stared at them for a long moment. You would hold the Confederation hostage for your demands? We would ensure that humanity gets a fair chance, Tejo said. Nothing more, nothing less. Commander Vex turned away, seeming to speak to someone they couldn't see, probably communicating with the Confederation Council through some unseen technology. After several tense minutes, the commander turned back. The Council requires time to discuss your proposal. I will return in 3 of your Earth days with their response. And in the meantime, Ji Young asked. In the meantime, the bacteria continues to spread, Vex said, the voice now carrying a hint of grudging respect. You have certainly guaranteed that the Confederation will take your world seriously, Dr. Kim, Dr. Park, but you have also made dangerous enemies. With that warning, the alien commander stepped back toward the shimmering distortion in the wall. 3 days. After Commander Vex disappeared and the wall returned to normal, Tejo and Ji Young collapsed into chairs. That went better than I expected, Tejo said, his voice shaking slightly now that the tension was broken. Ji Young laughed nervously. Better? We just blackmailed an entire galactic civilization. They could decide to attack Earth instead of negotiating. Tejo shook his head. I don't think so. The bacteria is in their systems now. If they attack us, they lose the deactivation code forever. They sat in silence for a moment, contemplating what they had done and what might happen next. Do you think they'll agree to our terms? Ji Young finally asked. I think they have to, Tejo replied. We've proven that humans are too clever to be ignored or contained. Whether they like it or not, we're part of the galactic community now. He looked out the window at the night sky. Somewhere up there, aliens were scrambling to deal with microscopic Earth bacteria that was eating their technology bit by bit. Professor Nix was right about one thing, Tejo said with a small smile. Human approaches to problems are different, and sometimes that's exactly what's needed. 3 days passed slowly. Tejo and Ji Young barely slept. They took turns staying in the lab, waiting for Commander Vex to return. They told no one else about what was happening. Who would believe them anyway? On the 3rd night, Tejo was checking data on his computer when the air began to hum. The wall shimmered and Commander Vex stepped through, still wearing the imposing battle armor. But this time, the alien was not alone. Professor Nix came through the portal behind the commander, along with 3 other aliens Tejo had never seen before. One was tall and thin with skin that looked like flowing water. Another was short and wide with 6 arms. The third looked almost human except for its purple skin and eyes that took up half its face. Dr. Kim, Commander Vex said formally. Dr. Park, the Confederation Council has considered your demands. Tejo and Ji Young stood side by side, trying to look confident despite being faced with 5 aliens in their small lab. The purple, almost human alien stepped forward. I am Ambassador Lear, representing the Confederation Diplomatic Corps. After much debate, the Council has agreed to open negotiations with Earth regarding membership status. Ji Young glanced at Tejo, her eyes wide with surprise. They hadn't expected the Confederation to give in so easily. However, Ambassador Lear continued, full membership cannot be granted immediately. There are protocols, evaluations, cultural exchanges that must happen first. How long will this process take? Tejo asked. Under normal circumstances, several of your decades, the ambassador replied. But given the unique circumstances, we are prepared to expedite the process to 5 Earth years. Commander Vex's helmet tilted toward them. 5 years during which your bacteria continues to damage our systems. That's not acceptable, Tejo said firmly. We need guarantees, written agreements that Earth will be treated fairly, and we need them now, not in 5 years. The 6-armed alien made a gurgling sound that might have been frustration. You are in no position to make demands, The Confederation could simply quarantine your entire solar system. You could, Ji Young agreed, but then you'd never get the deactivation code for the bacteria, and from what Commander Vex told us, the damage is spreading. The aliens looked at each other, and Tejo had the impression they were communicating silently through some unseen technology. Finally, Professor Nix spoke. Perhaps a compromise is possible. The Council has authorized me to offer immediate provisional member status to Earth. This would grant your world basic protections under Confederation law and allow limited access to our technologies and knowledge base. And in return? Tejo asked, suspicious of this sudden generosity. In return, you provide the deactivation code for your bacteria, Commander Vex said bluntly. Tejo and Ji Young stepped away from the aliens and whispered together for a few minutes. Then they turned back. We want the agreement in writing, Tejo said, and we want proof that it's been ratified by your council before we hand over the code. The watery alien made a rippling motion that somehow conveyed annoyance. You do not trust the word of the Confederation? Would you in our position? Ji Young asked simply. Ambassador Lear raised a hand in a surprisingly human gesture of calm. Your caution is understandable. We will provide a formal treaty for your review. The ambassador touched a device on their wrist, and a holographic document appeared in the air between them. It was written in both the alien language and, to Tejo's surprise, perfect English. This grants Earth provisional member status, with a clear path to full membership within 5 years, assuming certain basic criteria are met, Ambassador Lear explained. It includes protection against aggression, access to specified technologies, and cultural exchange programs. Tejo and Ji Young spent an hour reading through the document carefully. They asked questions about unclear sections, requested changes to specific wording, and demanded clarification on several points. The aliens showed remarkable patience during this process. When they were finally satisfied, Tejo asked, "How do we know this is official? That the Council has approved it?" Professor Nix's eyes blinked in sequence. A fair question. The alien handed Tejo a small device, similar to the crystal they had received months ago. This contains the official Council approval, with the digital signatures of all 57 Council members. It also includes a message from the High Chancellor herself. Tejo connected the device to his computer, the screen filled with strange symbols and then images of what he assumed were the Council members, each marking the document in their own way. At the end was a being of stunning beauty, with skin like diamonds and eyes that seemed to contain galaxies. The High Chancellor, Professor Nix said quietly. She rarely addresses individual worlds. The diamond-skinned alien spoke in a voice like music. The computer translated, "People of Earth, we welcome you to the greater community of worlds. Your path to this moment has been unconventional, but perhaps that is fitting for your unique species. We look forward to learning from each other in the centuries to come." When the message ended, Tejo looked at Ji Young. She nodded slightly. "We accept the agreement," he said to the aliens. "And now for our part of the bargain." He handed Ambassador Lear a small data drive. This contains the deactivation code for the bacteria. It's a specific frequency that causes the bacteria to become dormant. They won't die, but they'll stop reproducing and stop consuming materials. Commander Vex took the drive, examining it suspiciously. "How do we know this will work?" "Test it," Ji Young suggested. "On a small system first, if you don't trust us." "Professor," Nix made the chiming sound they now recognized as laughter. "After what your bacteria has done, trust is in short supply, Dr. Park." Ambassador Lear stepped forward again. "Nonetheless, this marks a new beginning between Earth and the Confederation. There will be more meetings, more formal introductions between your world leaders and ours." "What happens now?" Tejo asked. "Now," said the ambassador, "we begin the process of properly introducing ourselves to your world. No more hiding in university labs after hours." The next few weeks were a blur. Government officials, scientists, and diplomats from around the world came to meet the Confederation representatives. News of alien contact spread across the globe, causing both excitement and fear. Tejo and Ji Young found themselves at the center of it all. They were hailed as heroes by some and criticized by others who thought they had taken too great a risk with humanity's future. 1 month after the agreement was signed, Professor Nix visited Tejo's lab alone. "The deactivation code worked," the alien said without preamble. "Our systems are recovering." "I'm glad to hear it," Tejo replied. Professor Nix's eyes blinked in that familiar sequence. "You know, when I first came to Earth, I thought your species was interesting but primitive. I never imagined you would outmaneuver the entire Confederation." Tejo smiled. "We're full of surprises." "Indeed. The Council underestimated you. They will not make that mistake again." As Professor Nix turned to leave, the alien added, "By the way, the Confederation Science Academy would like to invite you and Dr. Park to give a series of lectures. Your approach to bioengineering has generated quite a bit of interest." Tejo's smile widened. "We'd be honored." After the alien left, Tejo stood by the window, looking at the night sky. The stars no longer seemed distant and unreachable. They were filled with worlds and people that humanity would soon meet, all because of a request for a water filter, and the cleverness to see an opportunity when it presented itself. "Not bad for primitive humans," he whispered to himself, and turned off the lab lights.